this age of terror, the law and politics are on a collision course, and nowhere more so than in Indonesia. Supporters of the radical Muslim cleric Bakar Bashir take to the streets to protest his innocence. In Australia, this man is reviled as the mastermind behind the Bali terrorist attack.
Islam itu mengajarkan kekuatan moral dan kekuatan badan. Nah, untuk apa? Untuk jihad membela diri, gitu. Jadi itu Islam.
But Bashir's lawyers insist there's not nearly enough evidence to keep him in his Jakarta jail cell.
Boleh aja kalau lagi lapar, kenapa enggak?
As the high-stakes battle to capture and convict terrorists is waged, there are fears fundamental legal principles are being cast aside. It's said that the rule of law and due process are the bedrock on which justice and liberty are based. But for too long here in Indonesia, the legal system has been a sham, a system in which justice goes to the highest bidder or to those with political power. After the fall of Suharto 6 years ago, there were high hopes that those who for decades had acted with impunity might finally be brought to book. That those who had trampled on the rights of ordinary citizens and plundered the nation's coffers would finally be punished. Well, the plain fact is, very few have been. And now, as the scourge of terrorism stalks this country, the courts are coming under new and intense pressures from overseas, as well as on the home front. It's no exaggeration to say that how the courts handle these pressures will have a fundamental bearing on the struggle to establish the rule of law in this country, which is so vital to securing its fledgling democracy. On the other side of the world, at Cambridge University, learned dons have been teaching law since the 13th century. And it was to these hallowed halls that Budiman Sujatmiko came to reflect on the fate Indonesian justice dealt him.
I started to respect the liberty more than I ever imagined, because being in prison, yeah, you got lessons that liberty is the main prerequisite for everybody to live a better life. I think this is quite nice building because...
Sentenced in 1997 by Suharto's courts to 13 and a half years on subversion charges, only the dictator's fall saved Budiman from serving his full jail term.
Royal astronomer, he's really smart.
Now an aspiring politician, Budiman's story is the story of a legal system's dark past and its far from certain future.
This democratic transition could fail, could fail if there is a process of decaying committed by those people who are dreaming of aspiring to restore the old order. Here in my country, because I just arrived here a few days ago from UK. So when I heard about this bomb, I got this shock. I was shocked by the reality about my country.
While Budiman has been away, terrorism has cut a bloody swathe through his country. In the past 2 years alone, there have been 3 major bomb attacks in Indonesia, in Bali, at Jakarta's Marriott Hotel, and now against the Australian Embassy. As police sift through the carnage for evidence, not far away in the capital Supreme Court, the very judges who may have to assess this evidence are being sworn in. The Chief Justice administering the oaths has a gargantuan task. The Indonesian judiciary is renowned for being among the world's most corrupt. It's a fact Chief Justice Bakar Bashir doesn't attempt to hide.
I don't know exactly what the percentage of the bribery, but I do recognize that there are some bribery in judiciary. I do recognize that some of them, the judges not have so good integrity, and we try to take action to them. So.
Some of the leading lawyers who appear before Bakar Bashir's brother judges are even more direct. Indonesia's best-known defence counsel is Adnan Wirawan. What percentage of cases do you think are decided as a result of money having changed hands?
That's hard to say, of course. Yeah, if you look at percentage.
More than 50%? More than 60%?
I would say perhaps 70 to 80% cases.
Is corruption worse now than it was under the Suharto era?
Yeah, getting worse and worse. Because this is the, I think, the biggest sin of Suharto, if I may use that word. He legitimized corruption.
One of the many who fell prey to this corruption was Budiman Sujatmiko.
We are prepared for the worst, even for the death penalty.
The charge of subversion he faced back in 1997 was as cynical as it was trumped up. As for the trial, it was a farce.
Ini perlu kita ingatkan sebagai sesama umat manusia bahwa kita ini hidup di negara yang beradab, ya.
In the very same courtroom Budiman Sujatmiko was tried in 7 years ago, another showcase trial is underway.
Silakan duduk kembali. Terima kasih.
The editor of the country's leading news weekly, Tempo magazine, has been charged with criminal defamation and faces a jail term. Bambang, just how concerned are you that you could be sent away to jail today?
Well, I'm more concerned that if that is the decision, it will be marking the end of our democracy.
How confident are you that the Indonesian judiciary is capable of delivering you justice? Because there's been a lot of criticism of the judiciary saying it's corrupt.
There are more possible of intervention from non-legal forces. And here you saw it for yourself. We have people outside, clearly random mob people, trying to make sure that I go to jail. They are commercial random mob, not really people of Indonesia who care about our democracy.
The people outside are supporters of Tommy Winata, the Suharto-era crony who, with the help of government prosecutors, has brought the case. The offending Tempo article delved into Winata's business affairs. Back in court, defence lawyer Mulya Lubis sounds anything but optimistic about the outcome for his client and the media.
Well, since 1998, we enjoy press freedom, which we did not have under Suharto regime. And now the press freedom is under attack. And this is a systematic attempt to kill the freedom of the press.
The judges find Bambang Harimurti guilty and sentence him to 1 year in prison. Amid the pandemonium, the Tempo editor says he will appeal the court's verdict.
Well, this is a sad day for democracy in Indonesia because the judge who has a golden opportunity to be noted in our history as the judges who reform our law decided not to use this golden opportunity and instead want to bring us back to the dark ages of repressive government. Yuk. Jadi kita akan mengajukan perlawanan hukum kan? Setuju kan? Setuju. menjadi lemah semangat, jangan menjadi takut dalam menjalankan tugas Anda sebagai bangsa.
Locked inside Jakarta's Cipinang prison, the same prison Budiman Sujatmiko was held in, is Abu Bakar Bashir. His case, like Tempo's, is also capturing headlines. But when it comes to trying terrorists, the Indonesian legal system is faring much better. We've been given permission to film the Muslim cleric, charged with masterminding a series of bombings, as he meets his lawyers.
Ini yang pertama kan sudah jelas. Jadi harus hati-hati terhadap orang Yahudi. Jadi semua umat Islam yang akan memperjuangkan, yang akan membela dan memanfaatkan Islam itu harus diperhitungkan benar-benar. Hati-hati terhadap penunggangan orang-orang Yahudi dalam bentuk kekerasan-kekerasan gitu saja.
Bashir is drafting a statement condemning the bombing of the Australian embassy, but his sympathy for the perpetrators is clear.
Iya. Poin pertama, saya mengecam ya, oleh karena saya mengorbankan rakyat kemajuan umat Islam. Itu poin pertama. Sasaran mereka, niat mereka untuk membela Islam di mana saja, dan sasaran mereka untuk menghantam Amerika, itu niat yang paling baik. Itu yang harus kita dukung, tapi caranya dengan ngebom itu yang kita tidak setuju. Gitu loh. Itu yang harus kita anukan. Itu niat jihad, maka saya katakan mereka itu bukan teroris, mereka itu mujahid.
The cleric is being kept in prison pending charges the police say they'll lay against him for the Marriott bombing and a plan to attack an Australian-funded anti-terrorism centre. Adnan Wirawan, Bashir's lawyer, questions the legal basis for his client's continued incarceration.
A word out in the street say that Abu Bakar Bashir is going to be kept locked up no matter what. So we're not dealing with the law anymore. We're dealing with the international pressures about their belief on Abu Bakar Bashir. So no matter what, he's going to be there either for traffic violations, either for immigration violations, anything. He's going to be kept locked up.
Melbourne University's Professor Tim Lindsay knows the Indonesian legal system back to front. Despite the bombing attacks, he continues to return to Jakarta to help train Indonesian judges and lawyers. While he's not calling for Abu Bakar Bashir's release, he agrees with Adnan Wirawan that the Indonesian justice system is now under intense international pressure.
Yeah, there is huge pressure internationally on Indonesia, particularly from the United States. I think that we are seeing a judicial system that's emerging, that's finding its way towards rule of law and trias politica, the separation of powers, to use the Indonesian term, really being pressured at a critical moment.
It's pressure that defence lawyer Wirawan says he's feeling as well.
I'm placed, as an enemy. That's the kind of pressure I have, I have a pressure, cynical comments from my neighbors, from my wife, friends. I'm no different than any other lawyers in this world, and I'm no different with any other lawyers in Australia. My role there is to protect the law, to uphold the law, and to provide maximum defense for the accused provided by the law.
The country's constitutional court recently ruled that Bali bombing convictions obtained under the new anti-terror laws were invalid because they were retrospective. There are now fears in the West that the verdict means the bombers will get off.
We're there to lodge the appeal on behalf of the Bali bomber offenders because we believe we are there to protect the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, which this has bigger interest than just the Bali victim, okay? I just feel that in the past, they used a wrong law to convict him, and I'm here to correct that wrong applications of the law.
There's nothing at all to stop the Bali bombers being charged. In the meantime, or then, with all the other hundreds of offences they've committed, murder, equivalent of assault, arson, all destruction of property. The list of charges is enormous, and we're now seeing that the police and the prosecutors are moving towards compiling the dossiers necessary to lay these charges against Bakar Bashir and the others. I don't think we should see the difficulties in the Constitutional Court decision or in working through a new court process as something that will mean that the Bali bombers will escape justice.
What's more, there's a strong view among Indonesia's legal fraternity that when it comes to handling terrorist trials, it might just be doing a better job than in courts elsewhere.
We learn from America all the principle of justice, of rule of law, the due process of law, and the protection of human rights. Yet America is now the #1 gross violator of these principles. Look at how they treated the prisoners of Guantanamo Bay.
At least in Indonesia, the terrorists get an open, transparent trial that is reported widely, and nobody disputes the way the evidence has been dealt with and the outcomes are fair. They don't get that in Guantanamo Bay until now, and what sort of a trial are they going to get? I think, it's deeply hypocritical for Americans to say Indonesia is not handling terrorism effectively at its courts when they won't give their own terrorist detainees trials and when they won't release witnesses to give evidence in those trials. It's bizarre.
The Tempo case and the terrorist trials reflect the Herculean struggle now underway for justice in Indonesia. The forces of entrenched corruption are pitted against those who advocate reform and transparency. Although a general in the Suharto regime, the country's president-elect Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono says he's with the reformers.
What I had to do is to review all the process. I should not intervene the legal process because politics cannot enter in that arena. But I have to make sure that everything is done properly, fairly, based on the supremacy of law.
And the man touted as the next Attorney General, none other than Tempo defence lawyer Mulya Lubis, is already foreshadowing how he might tackle one of the new government's most important jobs.
Indonesia is known as one of the most corrupt nations in the world. And yet, very few corrupt people brought to court. So I think we need to do that. We need to bring, big fish, quote unquote, to the court and send them to jail.
Well, the biggest fish of all, of course, is the former president, Suharto. Should he be brought before a court?
Well, I think everyone here in this country is equal before the law. No one is above the law. If his, health condition allow us to bring him to court, then there shouldn't be any reason not to do that.
But there are few Indonesians who believe Suharto will ever be brought to court, least of all the rising political star who was incarcerated in the dictator's jails. Finally, after his years in prison and studying overseas, Budiman Sujatmiko is back with his family. And for the first time is watching foreign correspondents report on his trial. The anger and raw emotions are now gone, and in their place is a more reflective man.
I'm quite proud that I contributed one thing to this process of democratization in this country, and it's very worth it, and I am proud being part of this process of democratization.
But when it comes to Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono and the government he promises will advance the cause of legal reform in Indonesia, Budiman shows flashes of the old firebrand.
I think he's a liar, because actually change is only started in 21st May 1998 when Suharto stepped down, and during that time Yudhoyono is in the side of Suharto's regime, not in the side of the democratic movement.
Bangunlah rakyat Indonesia, bersiaplah segera.
Indonesia's democratic movement has made significant strides since Budiman Sujatmiko was jailed 7 years ago. But unless the rule of law and due process take root, the struggles of the past will come to naught.
Partai Rakyat Demokratik untuk